You know that feeling when you're staring at your screen watching a trade move against you and your heart starts pounding. Your palms get sweaty, your breathing gets shallow. You tell yourself you'll close the position if it drops just a little more, but then it does drop, and somehow you convince yourself to hold on just a bit longer. Maybe it'll turn around. Maybe this is just temporary. And then, before you know it, what was supposed to be a small loss has turned into something that wipes out weeks of careful gains. I've been there. Every single trader who's ever been honest about their journey has been there. And here's what nobody tells you when you're starting out. Your emotions aren't just getting in the way of good trading, they're specifically designed to destroy it. Think about that for a second. The same emotional responses that kept your ancestors alive on the African savanna, the same fight-or-flight mechanisms that helped humans survive predators and famines. Those exact same systems are now working against you every single time you place a trade. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a market downturn and a lion hiding in the grass. It just knows there's danger and it floods your system with chemicals that make you want to run, freeze, or fight back. Except in trading, running means closing profitable positions too early. Freezing means holding losing positions too long. And fighting back means revenge, trading yourself into oblivion. Let's talk about what actually happens in your brain when you're in a trade. When you enter a position and it starts moving in your direction, your brain releases dopamine. This is the same chemical that gets released when you eat chocolate, when you fall in love, when you accomplish something meaningful. It feels incredible. And your brain, being the pattern-seeking machine that it is, immediately starts craving more of that feeling. This is why winning trades can be just as dangerous as losing ones, because that dopamine hit makes you want to chase the next trade and the next one, even when your system tells you to wait. Even when there's no good setup, your logical brain knows you should be patient, but your emotional brain is screaming for another hit of that good feeling. Now let's talk about what happens when a trade goes against you. The amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for processing fear and anxiety, lights up like a Christmas tree. Your body goes into stress mode. Cortisol floods your system. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational decision-making and long-term planning, essentially gets hijacked. This is a neurological fact, not a character flaw. When you're in fight-or-flight mode, the thinking part of your brain literally has reduced function. You become more impulsive, more reactive, more focused on immediate threats rather than long-term strategy. And this is exactly when you need to be making your most important decisions about whether to hold or fold. Here's where it gets even more insidious. You've probably heard about loss aversion, the psychological principle that losses hurt about twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. If you make $100, you feel pretty good. If you lose $100, you feel terrible. Not just not good, but actively terrible in a way that's disproportionate to the gain you felt earlier. This isn't because you're weak or overly emotional. This is hardwired into human psychology. Our ancestors, who were more afraid of losing their stored food than they were excited about finding more food, were the ones who survived winters and famines. But in trading, this ancient survival mechanism manifests as an absolute refusal to accept losses when you need to, and a desperate urge to lock in gains before they have a chance to develop into something substantial. I want you to imagine your last really bad trading day. Not just a losing day, but a day where you felt completely out of control. Maybe you started with one bad trade. That's fine, that happens to everyone. But then you needed to make it back. You needed to prove to yourself that you weren't wrong, that you could recover. So you took another trade, maybe with a bigger position size to recover faster. That one went against you too, and now you're down even more. And now the emotional spiral really begins. You're angry at the market, angry at yourself, desperate to get back to even. Each trade becomes less about following your system and more about trying to soothe the psychological pain of being wrong. Before you know it, you've blown through your daily loss limit, maybe even your weekly loss limit, and you're sitting there wondering how someone who knows better could have acted so irrationally. The answer is that knowledge and emotion operate on different tracks in your brain. You can know intellectually that revenge trading is destructive. You can have read every trading psychology book ever written. You can understand the statistics and the probabilities and the importance of risk management. But when your emotional brain is in the driver's seat, all of that knowledge becomes background noise. It's like knowing that eating an entire pizza isn't healthy while you're sad or stressed, and then eating an entire pizza anyway. The knowledge doesn't disappear. It just becomes irrelevant in the moment when your emotional needs are screaming louder than your rational thoughts. And here's what makes this particularly cruel. The market is specifically designed to exploit these emotional vulnerabilities, not by some conspiracy, but by its very nature. Markets move in ways that maximize pain for the maximum number of participants. When everyone's scared, that's when the market reverses upward. When everyone's greedy and euphoric, that's when the crash comes. The market makers, the algorithms, the institutional traders, they all profit from emotional retail traders panicking at bottoms and buying at tops. Your fear and greed create the liquidity they need to execute their strategies. Every time you make an emotional decision, you're essentially transferring money from your account to someone who's trading without emotions, whether that's a disciplined professional trader or a computer algorithm that doesn't even have emotions to begin with. So what do you do with this information? How do you fight against millions of years of evolution that's literally wired into your neural pathways? The first thing you need to understand is that you can't eliminate emotions from trading. Anyone who tells you to just trade without emotions or be disciplined is giving you advice that's about as useful as telling someone with depression to just be happy. Your emotions are part of you. They're not going away. The goal isn't to become some kind of emotionless trading robot. The goal is to build systems and habits that work with your emotional reality rather than pretending it doesn't exist. Let me tell you about a study that was done with professional traders versus amateur traders. Researchers used brain imaging to watch what happened in their brains during trading. What they found was fascinating. The amateur traders showed massive emotional responses to both wins and losses. Their brains lit up with activity in the emotional centers, and their decision-making centers showed reduced activity during stressful moments. But the professional traders, their brains showed something different. They still had emotional responses, but those responses were significantly dampened. And most importantly, their prefrontal cortex stayed active even during losses. They had trained their brains through thousands of hours of trading to maintain rational function, even when the emotional centers were firing. They didn't eliminate the emotions. They just didn't let those emotions override their decision-making processes. How did they do this? Through something called emotional regulation, and more specifically, through the implementation of systematic processes that remove real-time decision-making from the equation. Think about it this way. When are you most emotional during a trade? It's when you're actively watching it, when you're deciding moment by moment whether to hold or close, when you're refreshing your P&L every 30 seconds. That constant decision-making under pressure is exactly what triggers your emotional responses. But what if most of those decisions were already made before you even entered the trade? What if you knew exactly where your stop loss was going to be, exactly where your take profit was going to be, exactly how much you were risking, and exactly under what conditions you would exit, all before you click that buy or sell button? This is where the concept of a trading plan becomes not just important, but absolutely essential to your survival as a trader. And I'm not talking about a vague idea in your head about how you'll trade. I'm talking about a written, specific, detailed plan that you create when you're calm, rational, and not in a position. A plan that tells you exactly what setups you're looking for, exactly how you'll identify them, exactly how much you'll risk on each trade, exactly where you'll place your stops, exactly how you'll manage the position, and exactly under what conditions you'll deviate from the plan, if ever. When you have this kind of plan, trading becomes less about making emotional decisions in the moment and more about simply executing a predetermined system. But here's where most traders fail with this approach. They create a plan, they follow it for a few trades, maybe even a few weeks, and then one big loss happens and they throw the plan out the window. Because in that moment of pain, their emotional brain convinces them that the plan is flawed, that they need to adapt, that this situation is different, and maybe sometimes the plan does need adjustment, but that adjustment should never happen in the heat of the moment. That adjustment should happen during your post-trading analysis, when you're reviewing your trades with a calm and objective mindset. One of the rules I live by is this: I can change my trading plan, but only when the markets are closed, and only after I've reviewed at least 20 trades using the current system. Let's talk about position sizing, because this is where emotions destroy more traders than almost anything else. When you're on a winning streak, you feel invincible. Your confidence is sky high. You've made 5 winning trades in a row, and each one has boosted your dopamine levels and reinforced your belief that you've figured something out. So what do? You increase your position size. You think, if I can make this much with a standard position, imagine what I could make with double or triple the size. And then that bigger position goes against you, and suddenly you're not just dealing with a normal loss. You're dealing with a loss that wipes out multiple previous wins. The emotional impact is devastating, and it often triggers that revenge trading spiral we talked about earlier. On the flip side, when you're on a losing streak, your confidence is shattered. You start trading smaller and smaller, or you become so afraid of another loss that you don't take valid setups. You watch perfect entries form, and you talk yourself out of them because you're afraid. And then, those trades work out beautifully without you, which creates a different kind of psychological pain, the pain of missed opportunity. This makes you even more emotional and erratic in your decision-making. You end up in this terrible cycle where you trade big when you should trade small, and trade small when you should be executing your normal plan. The solution? Fixed position sizing based on a percentage of your account, not on how you feel about your recent performance. If you risk 1% per trade, you risk 1% whether you've won 10 in a row or lost 10 in a row. Your emotions don't get a vote. Now let's address something that nobody wants to talk about, but everyone experiences: the relationship between your trading and your self-worth. When you win a trade, you feel smart, capable, successful. When you lose a trade, especially several in a row, you feel stupid, incompetent, like a failure. This is one of the most dangerous psychological traps in trading, because it makes every trade about more than just money. It makes every trade a referendum on your intelligence and value as a person. And when the stakes are that high emotionally, there's no way you can trade rationally. You need to separate your identity from your trading results. You are not your P&L. A losing trade doesn't make you a bad trader any more than a winning trade makes you a genius. You're simply someone executing a system that has an edge over time, and that system will include both wins and losses as natural parts of the process.